180 for 7 minutes. Here we go. Mr. Miller, you understand that you are under oath, do you not? Yes, sir. What is your occupation? Vice President and Trust Officer. Where are you so employed? The First National Bank. How long have you held that position? I have been with the bank since January 2012. Are you in charge of the trust department? I am. What do your duties consist of as head of trust department? I am responsible for all activities of the trust department. All right. You say you have held that position since 2012. Is that right? No, I must have misunderstood your other question. I have been with the bank since 2012 and I have held my present position for the last 5 years. All right. As head of the trust department, you were responsible for the management of the Smith Agency account. Is that correct? That is one of the accounts I handled personally, yes. Over how long a period of time were you taking care of that account? For the last 8 years. Did you know Mr. Smith prior to that time? Yes, I knew him before then. Another trust officer had been taking care of his account. I took over when the previous trust officer retired. Do the bank records show the date that the agency account was created? Certainly, it was September 3, 2010. That would match the date which is on the agency appointment. Is that correct? Yes, sir. Do the bank records reflect the value of the assets that were in the account in 2010? I don't have that figure in front of me at the moment, but I know it was over $400,000 when the account was initially created. Do you have any indication what the fair market value of the stock was? I do not. Would the bank have any record to show that? I am not sure how long those kinds of records are retained. They are internal records, you see. Since you started with the bank, you have had many personal contacts with Mr. Smith. Is that correct? Yes, sir. You heard Mr. Smith testify regarding conversations between him and you, which took place over a long period of time, did you not? I did. How frequently would you estimate you have had contact with him subsequent to 2010? That would be difficult to say. Would you explain for the record what an agency account consists of? Our basic function is to complete the transaction and to take care of the accounting. When the agency would buy or sell, it would do so through its own broker. The bank would make delivery or get the payment, as the case may be. It would credit the proceeds. It would calculate the gain or loss, and it would supply the agency with the information at the end of the year. Does the bank offer investment advice to the agency? No, sir. In this case, did you discuss such matters on an informal basis? Well, we talked about investments in general, yes. We talked about what the market was doing, where it was going, and things like that. In other words, this account was not supervised. Is that correct? That's correct. In effect, the bank performed a bookkeeping function. In effect, yes. Does the bank have records of all the transactions that took place involving the Smith Agency account? Yes, sir, it does. To your knowledge, have those records been given to Mr. Smith? He has received a statement every year since the account was opened. Would those statements show each transaction that involved the agency account? If he bought or sold a security, it would, but it would not, for example, if a stock paid 5 or 6 dividends, we were not going to show him every one of those dates. You were employed as the manager of the trust department during the period of time that relates to this transaction. Is that correct? Which transaction? The promissory note that has been admitted into evidence. It is dated September 4, 2010. Yes, I was. Were you responsible for the execution of that note? No, sir. Who was? I am not sure who the loan officer was. I would have to look and see whose initials are on the note. Who would have possession of the bank records relating to all notes that were secured by the pledge agreement? Mr. Jones. Would those records include all notes that were executed by Mr. Smith? I have no direct knowledge of that. I do not have access to the credit records. Who would have access to the credit records? Mr. Jones. What is his job with the bank? He is in charge of the loan department. Mr. Smith said earlier that the pledge agreement was created to avoid the shifting of collateral back and forth. Could you elaborate on the procedure of the bank with respect to that type of transaction? When the note was first taken out, or at least when I first knew about it, the note was secured by a specific collateral, which was left with the loan department. The pledge agreement allowed him, in effect, to take the entire agency assets and place them as collateral against the note. In other words, if he sold one stock and bought another, it did not matter to the bank as long as the total market value of the account was enough to maintain the collateral. In the summer of 2010, you talked with Mr. Smith several times, did you not? Yes, we talked about many different things. Do you consider yourself to be a personal friend of his? Yes, I do. We have had lunch together, had a few drinks, talked in general about a variety of things. When was the last annual report given to Mr. Smith? I am not sure of the actual delivery date. However, it was prepared by the bank in December of 2008. With respect to the conversations you had with Mr. Smith, did you keep any notations of those? I may have on some occasions, but not on a regular basis. Do you know whether the bank has any records showing the dates of any of those conversations? I suppose if we had placed a telephone call, there would be a record on the bill. Were there any letters between the two of you regarding the agency account and the note? Well, most of the letters were from me to him. His answers were mostly by phone. Do you remember the last conversation you had with him prior to December 26, 2008? What is your name? David Hunter. Mr. Hunter, have you ever been convicted of a crime? Yes, sir, I have been convicted one time. Are any criminal charges pending against you at the present time? No, sir. Do you currently reside in this county? Not at the present time, no. I lived here about 18 months ago. While you were residing in this county, did you perform undercover work for the police department? Yes, I did. I worked with the Bureau of Narcotics. Did this work involve the purchase of a controlled substance? Yes, it did. From whom did you buy a controlled substance? From the defendant. I would like to ask you a few questions about what happened in July. You were involved in numerous buys during that month, weren't you? That's right. About how many? I could not say offhand. It was quite a few. It was probably around 20, wasn't it? Yes, sir, over a period of time. Other than the defendant, how many people did you deal with directly? Do you mean over the period of time that I worked with the police? That's correct. There were several people. What do you mean by several? Give me an estimate. Probably 20 people. Would that be 20 different transactions? Yes, sir. In some ways, you find it difficult, do you not, to separate one of these transactions from another one? No, sir, I have no problem separating them. Do you have a recollection of every one of those transactions? I have a little trouble with the times and the dates, but I have no trouble with how each transaction went down. By the time you bought a controlled substance from the defendant, you had developed quite an expertise on how to perform your duties, did you not? The police and I had set up a pattern, yes. The pattern you used with the defendant is the same pattern you used in your previous transactions. Is that correct? It was similar, yes, sir. In those 20 buys of controlled substances that you were involved in, what was the biggest one? The transaction with the defendant was the biggest. What was the smallest transaction? The smallest one involved 1/8 of an ounce of marijuana. About how much is that? $50, I think. On each of these buys, did you use marked money? That's correct. Did you get paid for any of this work? They gave me money under the Witness Protection Program. Was that for living expenses? That's right. How much was it? I don't recall. Was it over $1,000? Over a period of time, yes. You also testified last year in a series of trials.